And we're racing. The Hightower pushes Jensen along the exit of turn number 4. This when it's big slide. It's time to go racing at GRIDLIFE Midwest. Hill side by side. O'Gorman around the outside now for the top spot. Tom O'Gorman goes to lead. 3 wide for the lead.
This is great racing, folks. This is what this series is all about.
A mile high in the sky, GRIDLIFE Alpine Horizon returns to Pikes Peak International Raceway in Fountain, Colorado. First up this afternoon, GRIDLIFE Touring Cup qualifying on the 1.3-mile Roval course here at PPIR. Kyle Heyer joined by Jared DeAnda. Jared, welcome back.
Oh, man, thank you so much. Yeah, welcome. Thank you for having me. You know, normally I just talk about drifting, but you're actually going to be talking about drifting later on. But GLTC seems to be so exciting, so much traction, no pun intended, on what guys and gals are doing out here on this course. What do you make of this course, and what are the racers going to see?
It is the most unique racetrack on the calendar, Jared. This is the only Roval that we go to, a road course and an oval combined together. We run the banking in turns 1 and 2, then come off of the banking into the infield. Let's take a look at our 3D track map here and get a sense of what this course looks like. It's very unique. This used to be a racetrack that was used in the IRL and NASCAR from 1997 to 2005 on the oval course, but there's a look, Jared. Turn 1, fast flying through the banking. Big bump in the middle of turn 1 there before we head down to turn 2. Kink into the infield, hard on the brakes.
All right, so, and you talked about the track, that big bank, and that's utilized, and there you go. So there's that oval, then we get into the row. We get into the row portion of that track. That's where you're going to see, you know, throughout the weekend. How do you think the drifters laying down rubber on the course, how will that transition and transfer for the racers here this weekend? You also talked about that big bank. There's an obstacle there. Talk about that.
Yeah, so the tunnel that you come into the racetrack is under turns 1 and 2 on the NASCAR oval. The track is actually sunk down, so the GLTC drivers will be flat, full throttle there at about 115 miles an hour, keeping your foot to the floor as the car bounces and slams over that change in pavement. You can actually see where the tunnel is and how there's actually
you can see
scrapes.
the rubber and the scraping. You talked about it earlier about Tom O'Gorman. He almost cut a tire because he compressed so much the tire went into the wheel well, almost cut it. That's going to be an interesting point because you talked about strategy there, not against racers, not against yourself, but against the track.
Certainly, and I think a lot of GLTC comes down to race the racetrack, don't race your competitors.
Right.
It sounds counterintuitive, Jared, but a lot of the times the course is your biggest challenge. This road course is not typical. You're doing really 3 second gear hairpins. There's not a lot to it. But the challenge is how do you capitalize on the big curbs around here and keeping power down through the banking. And in the infield, here's Jeremy Swenson, 3rd in the points coming into the weekend. He's really on the outside of a real championship shot, but if he wins all 4 races this weekend, he mathematically has a chance at Heartland Park for our finale.
Yeah, you're talking about that. Through the entirety of this championship, who are the vehicles to watch? Who are the racers leading the pack? The ASM gentlemen, they're obviously, you know, they're in it to win it. Talking about the overall championship, but who are some of the vehicles and drivers to watch?
Well, Tom O'Gorman certainly is a factor. He's actually maximized the points that he can win this season until the finale. He's had 5 perfect rounds, 5 weekend victories. He's won, I don't know, 19 races this season, something ridiculous. So he is on it. There's his teammate, Zach Lavoie, in the number 42. Zach is in the top 7 in points competing, but it's also Andy Smedegard, Tom's team owner, that's a factor here this weekend in the blue number 212, and so he'll be a factor. I do want to talk about this Porsche here. This is Jeremy Boysen in the white and black Porsche Cayman, a brand new build here for GLTC. And earlier this week, when he was driving to the racetrack, he had a steer tire blowout on his rig. We actually have a photo of that ready to rip here to show you. He had a big moment on the interstate. Tire blew out and went off the road almost into oncoming lanes. Shaken up, but managed to get that thing slowed down and stopped. But we'll get that photo up here for you shortly and show you Boysen's wild ride. Hopefully the rest of the weekend goes smoother.
How do you think the elevation changed for a lot of these drivers going from, you know, lower elevation to, as you said, the mile in the mile high in the sky, right? We're taking a look at the ASM. That's Tomo, I believe. And we are, again, is that? Yep, that is Tomo. I saw his hair. He was fixing his hair. He put his helmet on. Do you think that's strategy? Do you think that's mental game, or is that just confidence? Because, like you said, there it is.
Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about there, and elaborate again on what happened.
Yes, this is Boysen's rig that he was carrying his Porsche Cayman in, and he had his son with him, and blew out a steer tire and went off the road and managed to get the thing slowed on down. And we're super glad that he's safe and everyone else was safe. Said he almost tipped the thing over. So really glad that he got here safely. But you know, half the battle, Jared, just getting to the racetrack.
Yeah, and kudos to all these GLTC racers, everybody that competes in grid. Grid Life. There's the number 30. We talked about Swenson earlier. Also, another driver we haven't seen. I'm looking for him right here, but Heitkotter. I'm not seeing his name here. Is he having issues? We're not seeing him kind of on the running order. This is the most vehicles, and yeah, he is right now. He is a DNS.
Yeah, so he hasn't laid down a time, but if he doesn't have a time, he might have just began a lap, so we still have some time, about 10 minutes in the session.
Oh, who's that on the back?
That is Colton Wade on the front straightaway. Looks like he has kind of slowed way down, might have a mechanical issue of some sort. There's Tom O'Gorman, by the way. He's got a black number 94, got some rainbows on the side, currently leading right now in qualifying, a 101.752. That's an incredibly quick lap. And you mentioned the altitude, Jared.
Yeah.
We're at 6,000 feet of altitude. You don't have the air density that you need
who said that?
to make power.
I can't see. I'm blacking out. I'm joking.
but you don't have the air density you need to make power. So the smaller displacement engines, the four-cylinder engines, they're going to struggle a little bit here. But despite that, O'Gorman is still leading in qualifying. He's maximizing all the time here on the infield.
It's finding that perfect balance of power to weight ratio. What you can kind of, obviously if you have a big V8, we're seeing Swenson out there in the big Corvette compared to the nimble S2000. So he might get him on the straight, but this track has a lot of variety. It kind of has all of it. This is basically the Leatherman of racetracks. You got that big, fast, obviously with that bump in the middle, but then it gets really tight in that technical area. And there again is Tomo, that ASM S2000.
This is actually Andy Spelling.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, so
my bad.
Tom, just for reference, a very similar looking car, but his is primarily black.
Yep.
He used to have a blue car. This is Andy's, Andy's trainer 3. Tom's is trainer 2. But Andy working his way through the infield, looking very greasy out there. I saw a lot of slipping and sliding.
And there we are. Heitkotter does join the party, slides into the DMs, and he slides into 102. So currently 4th. What are some of the fastest times we've seen, or from last year to this year? Conditions, really windy last night. It's starting to heat up. It was a little brisk this morning. I think that, obviously, as you say, the denser air, the colder air, force, all these different vehicles, different builds. But it's heating up right now.
It certainly is. And, I wanted to point out Nick Steniford there in that white S2000. He's a local guy here with
cool.
Savannah Little. I was also here in a white NC Miata that was actually owned by Gary Wimble previously. So those two drivers call this racetrack home.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It's a home race for them, and glad to have them here with us. You mentioned Heitkotter, though, and the lap times. Last year, I don't think we saw much better than a mid-101, low 101, so I think we're already very, very close to the track record.
6:35 on that qualifying clock. How much time do they have? If you're just tuning in, you're like, what is Grid Life? What is GLTC? What is the format throughout the weekend and throughout today?
So each session is roughly 15 minutes. That includes qualifying and all 4 races. This session will set the grid for the first race later today. That's how they will line up to start the race. When they race, their fastest lap in that race will set the grid for race number 2 later this evening. Tomorrow, we set race 3 by the finishing order from race 2, except for the top 10. We're going to re-qualify the top 10 one at a time tomorrow morning. We call that the GLTC Top 10 Shootout. And then race 4 is set by race 3 finishing position with a random invert of the top quarter of the field. So
that really gets exciting, because that's a big flex. If you come from the back of the pack and you eventually win, that just shows your racecraft. You're finding the right spot and you're finding the right speed.
Qualifying continues here about halfway through. O'Gorman leads Swenson by about a 10th. Here's Jacob Poole. We haven't seen this 88 Civic since Circuit of the Americas back in February. So it's been a little while. There's Swenson getting after it, sliding through turn 4. Look at him
Drifting's later. Relax. We do see Corvettes out there later. We talk about Matt Field. And, and I like that, it's kind of preluding drifting, what's going on later. We talk about the Corvettes. Matt Field will be out there. The 527, who do we have?
That's Jackson Jensen, son of Eric Jensen. So father-son duo out on track today. Looks like Father Eric in 3rd right now is besting his son. But Jackson has actually beat his father before on the racetrack, so a little friendly duo there.
Yeah, being a father yourself, or being a father myself, it's always great to see kind of the young Padawan, which I know you love Star Wars, become a Jedi. I'm joking, you don't love Star Wars, but you have to know that analogy, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that. 207.
207, that's Adam Wood out of Aztec, New Mexico. First time he's ever run in GLTC, and it's a rare all-wheel drive car.
Love the GCs,
yeah,
great car.
Typically don't see a lot of all-wheel drive in GLTC, a lot of rear-wheel drive, a lot of front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive's rare. We almost had 2, but Mike McGinnis, who ran with us at COTA, didn't make it here this weekend. Here's Jensen, by the way, LS Swap FRS.
Oh, I mean, you pilot an 86 yourself, an FRS actually, but what do you think about just that power to weight ratio? I mean, when that car debuted, that has the lower center of gravity, even lower than an S2000 with that factory engine, right? That was kind of the toy Baru.
Yep.
And here they go, you know what? Nah, we're not going to do that low center of gravity. We're just going to make it real nose heavy. How does this car compare?
Well, here's the great thing about the engine bay from that wide Subaru Boxer engine. You can basically drop any engine you want into it. This is really a V8 out of a Corvette, and all the suspension geometry has been changed. Eric has done a ton to that car. There's not a lot of FRS left in it.
Right, I was going to say, it's more like an RC car.
Basically,
yeah.
And it makes a lot of power. He actually has a sticker on the back that says he identifies as a Corvette. So that's where that stands, and here's Highcotter.
Highcotter in that Steal It Nissan 370Z. Wrapping out, and Highcotter's, I mean, he's really made a name for himself in GRIDLIFE. Him and the CFR team, they've done a really good job. Highcotter, his racing acumen, he's right there. He's in the mix, and he's really ruffled the feathers of a lot of these other vehicles.
Certainly, and Highcotter won 2 of the 4 races here last year. It was incredibly competitive. This season, they've made some changes to the car. It's been quick, but things haven't quite worked out for them. Think back to GRIDLIFE Midwest.
Yep.
They got buried deep in a 55-car field and never really could recover and run where the car deserved to. I'm excited to see Highcotter back in the top 5 this week.
Well, right now, there he is. He's currently sitting in 4th with Smedegard sitting in 5th. And yeah, you could see O'Gorman leading the pack still. Tomo just really just dunking on him. But like I said, doing his hair before he put his helmet on. And as you said, maximum points with those 5 victories. Just overall, just a dominant force. He's got the target on his back, but it's pretty much off, off to the race, off to the championship for him.
So here's the thing about Tom is, yes, that lap time is fast. I don't think that car is going to race very well. What do I mean by that? Yeah, he can make lap time, but he doesn't make it on the banking. Where do you start the race? Going into the banking. I think that car is going to struggle to lead into the infield complex. Once he gets past, I think it's going to be challenging for him to earn those spots back. But Swenson, Jensen, Highcotter all have much bigger engines, much more torque. The start of that race is going to be a Swenson, Jensen, Highcotter battle into turn 3, I think.
You also, as we're seeing them rip through, not Tomo here, but seeing them go through that infield portion, through that chicane, through that turn. We talked about the asphalt and that dip going into that big bank. Talk about maybe the conditions that they're going to be seeing here, because we talked about the rubber being laid down, but there's also some gravel. There's a gravel machine gun in that central part of that track.
Yeah, certainly the pavement is a little older and has been degrading just a little bit. This track was paved back in 1997. It's had a hard 25-year life, but the good news is there's a lot of big, tall, meaty curbs in there. You can jump up on the curbs and help rotate the car around. As we have a look at Michael Hilo in the 224 350Z, ran with us at COTA earlier this year. Watch him as he heads down into turn 4. He's going to put the right side tires near or onto the curbing and help hook that car around. Right as he gets to the apex here, right, you see the tires up on the curb, helps hook that car around. He's going to do the same thing through 5, 6, 7, 8.
You see that back ride almost lift. There you go, getting intimate with those curbs, and as you say, the big curbs. I thought you were calling me a big curb, but that's why I don't race. I stick to announcing here. I don't know if I could fit in half of these cars. So overall, you could see them coming out there, and just an amazing facility, just really a shape of things to come. Might see a little bit of rain tomorrow, a little bit of moisture, but it's kind of changing around. If you don't like the weather, just wait 10 minutes. It could definitely change. Here on that big bank, love that shot. Great shot by our production. Special Field Productions. Shout out to Matt and the boys. Catch them all. Who do we have?
This is Fiona Liu. That is one of the ASM customer support cars, and here she is rolling through turn 4 right now. Fiona has had a really good season, a lot of improvement this year. Thinking back to Mid-Ohio, we had a fun race on Sunday that she won. I think that did loads for her confidence. I think she's really excited to be back competing with us here in GLTC. The Pika S2K has had a long history here in GRIDLIFE, in Time Attack, and now in GLTC. Glad to have Fiona back out here, 14th out of the 25 right now.
All right, you can see 101 still the fastest. Tomo with that fastest time so far, but when Rubbin comes to racing, we'll see how he fares.
It looks like Jackson Jensen runs 7th, and hometown boy Nick Steniford runs 8th. Zach Lavoie 9th. Really solid run there for him as Swenson continues to try to get after Tomo. I think there's a lot of importance of starting on that front row and having the clear racetrack for you. And Swenson typically doesn't pass a lot of cars in a race. He typically starts up front and stays up front.
Wow.
We've seen him start 9th, 10th, 11th. it's a struggle for him to find pace in the corners or entering corners. This is a big, heavy car, 3,000 pounds plus, significantly heavier than Tomo's car. So there's the trade-off, more power, more weight. So it benefits you in different areas of the racetrack.
Yeah, so light and nimble gets you through the corners, but that big horsepower of Swenson, the big purple people eater that Swenson has, is definitely just that. So we're going through that section, just mere moments, and we will culminate qualifying.
Here's Joel Morrison. Joel injured his shoulder a couple of months ago and has missed some of the season because of that. He dropped another Honda V6 out of a TSX in this car last week.
Wow.
Dynoed last
gets
night.
into the dirt.
Yeah, dropped it off the end of the curb there a little bit. But this car has seen a variety of engine changes, engine swaps over the years. It was K-swap last year. Now it's got a V6 in it. The whole right side is kind of calico looking, had a little bit of contact. The recipient of some contact at Midwest Festival. And
well, ironically, you keep talking about, does it have 9 lives? Well, that's the name of his racing team.
He's used about 4 of them.
That's what I was going to say. You know, between different engine swaps, different hearts, different exchanges overall. So there is the 42.
Yep, that's Zach Lavoie. Zach is one of my favorite people in the paddock to talk to. Such a great guy with a big smile on his face all the time. Has been improving weekend after weekend, running top 10 right now. It's a great place for him to start.
Talking about the lay of the land today, we're just about to culminate GLTC qualifying. What else are we going to see today? What are we going to talking about? You know, from the different classes to over. Obviously, you and I are going to be talking about drifting. I'm excited to have you on there.
Yeah. So if you're on YouTube, we got Track Battle coming up next. If you're on Twitch or Facebook, you can watch all day right where you're watching.
That's right.
Stream 2 for YouTube viewers will be GLTC Race 1 starting at 2:30, followed by Track Battle Time Attack again. Drift will kick off at 4 o'clock p.m. We'll be back in here chatting about slipping and sliding all over the place. GLTC Race 2 in the afternoon. And then tonight, Night Shift Drift starting at 8:40. Really excited for that, Jared.
Yeah.
Lasers, drift cars. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Lasers and drift cars. Put little lasers on sharks. I mean, that mile-high sharks. All right, let's go for it.
It's about the coolest spectator experience you're going to have at a racetrack.
That's awesome, man. That's good. And, yeah, this is such a unique event. That's the beauty of tuning in. You know, obviously, the world's opened up, man. I mean, I was in Sweden, about a month and a half ago, and I was at Cleus McFarlane's thing this last weekend, and things are open, man. It's great to see smiles on faces, and obviously if you can't make it, come next year or just tune in, listen to Kyle here wrapping out, man.
Yeah, it's been a blast so far, and I've been here since Sunday, so I'm already almost a week into this.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And again, we have to give a big thanks to the operations staff and Charlie and Tricia who have put together this event almost single-handedly.
Yeah.
And then all the people alongside them on the operations team that were here all week, slaving away, putting up light towers and that sort of thing. They've been crushing it. This event last night had a big windstorm come through and knocked down a bunch of tents. Our ops team was holding down tents at 4 in the morning to keep them blown away. Just wild. We can't have a GRIDLIFE Festival without a big storm, Jared. You know the drill.
No, I know, and that's just motorsports, man. Take it as it comes. But right now, absolutely just getting clean air. Again, Tomo, that is not Tomo, but that is Smedegaard. But just showing his dominance.
I can see how. So Tom last year had a blue car.
Yep.
And they looked really similar to Andy's car. And now this season, Tom has a different chassis. I'm not sure if you were familiar with what happened to Tom last year.
Oh, yeah.
Testing before Road America, crashed that car, totaled it, bought a new car, and ASM has put that together, and it has been statistically the most successful car in GRIDLIFE Touring Cup history. Tom was trying to get Andy to drive that car this weekend.
That's right.
He said, you drive it, it's your car. But Andy refused. He's going to stay in his own 212 this weekend.
That's fair. Speaking of drifting, and I know you tune in for Formula Drift, how about ASM's own, Mr. Thorne?
Yeah, Robert Thorne.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's killing
Thorne's
over
killing
there
it. Thorne, we're going to see him next weekend at Salt Lake City, a new venue for us, Utah Motorsports Campus, talking about Formula Drift, Pro and Pro Spec. But yeah, Robert Thorne, his racing acumen, he's raced everything, sports car, McLaren, and he's competing in a BMW in the Formula Drift Pro Spec Championship. And he's having a heck of a time. He won the first round, and overall just a very fun driver to watch, and has a very humble approach to it because, wheel-to-wheel racers, sometimes they kind of scoff at drifting, and people just like the checkered flag. Drifting is that's a whole different ball of wax when it comes to competitive drifting. What we're going to see here today and into the night is all about just kind of demo expression sessions. We'll get into kind of the acumens of what it takes to be a pro drifter, but car control, and I think if you really just love cars and automotive kind of anarchy, you love racing, you love it all, and that's why you're here watching. There's Hike Cotter there in that Steelite Nissan 370Z ripping around. Again, the GT radials on the corners. Hike Cotter still holding on that number 4 spot.
One of the things I love about GLTC this season is our switch from basically requiring slick racing tires to now allowing only 200 treadwear, select 200 treadwear tires. That means that for Height Cotter in particular, they can run their GT radial tires and really be competitive. And that's exciting. All the drivers in the top 5 probably running on different tires. Tomo is likely on either a Kumo V730 or the new Bridgestone RE71 RS. That's a fantastic tire. Swenson likely on, they've got a Nexen tire that has been very, very quick. Jensen is probably on the same. Height Cotter on the GT radials most likely. Smedegard on the Kumos or the Bridgestone. So all sorts of different tires. The Falcon RT660, incredibly competitive tire, and a tire that a lot of people choose to run because of its availability and because they sponsor GRIDLIFE.
Well, of course, appreciate the sponsors that support GRIDLIFE. You can see FCP Euro down in the corner, Momo, which obviously making safety equipment, Hawk Performance, brake pads, and you can see those down in the corner. Momo, which obviously my wife works for Momo, so I'll obviously support them, but steering wheels, safety equipment, and Valvoline. Valvoline, the Ultimaniac will be out there later. Have you ridden in that car yet?
I have not ridden it. I've ridden in Forsberg 370. It's the only like real pro speed car I've been in. Okay. I gotta get a ride in that thing.
Yeah, definitely. And you might have to carry it yourself because I'm going to be jumping in that car and doing an interview with some of our talent that's coming on later. But what you're looking at Height Cotter here?
I have ridden in Height Cotter's car.
Oh, okay.
Back at Willow Springs in 2021.
Sick.
And he had that thing uncorked. He's got it detuned for this class. But he had it running about 320 or so wheel horsepower, and that thing was wild. Had a little bit of ABS problems, and it was kind of skidding around a little bit. It was kind of fun to ride in. But
you pee a little bit? I think you peed a little bit. Yeah.
You get out of it, you're just like, I'm wet. I don't know why I'm wet. But
you're sweating. You're sweating. You know? You're nervous. Thank you to eBay Motors for supporting GRIDLIFE. And you walk through the paddock, you're going to see all these different personalities. I mean, did you see that driver's list of everybody coming? And, you got Adam LZ. He's doing double duty. Adam LZ's doing, he's doing the track battle in his Evo 5. Beautiful looking car. JDM right-hand drive, but he's also drifting as well with the RTR camp. He's going to be over there as well with Chelsea Denofa, but a variety of drifters. But you always love that, and that's what I was talking about, that racing acumen being applied to drifting with Mr. Thorne in the Pro Spec. But we are just moments away from wrapping up qualifying.
Yeah, they're giving him a long time on the road, which is great for them. Get more laps in. Here's Wes Case in the 767 BMW. We've seen him a handful of times this season. One of the heavier cars in the field, but makes a whole lot of power. Glad to have Wes with us here this weekend. We haven't mentioned Myriad Motorsports. They have their entire camp here for the first time since Midwest Festival. That is Felipe Gonzalez, Hans Horpedal, Jake Jorenstad, and Joel Morrison. All 4 of those drivers are here and competing. And Joel Morrison right now, magically 5th and 6th. That's a data issue I probably screwed up, so I'm going to fix that later. Joel on there twice, but looks like inside the top 5, we've got a handful of G-Speed cars. That'd be Swenson and Height Cotter, or excuse me, Swenson and Jensen. Height Cotter for Forsberg Racing, O'Gorman and Smedegard for ASM, Andy Smedegard Motorsports. No checkered flag quite yet. Looks like they're slowing down, though. But we have had all 25 cars on track. A couple new drivers towards the bottom of the list there. Brandon Peterson out of Colorado, a 106.697, and a few others that are new to the series that are just getting their feet wet here in qualifying. But there's the checkered flag.
Yeah, okay, we got a checkered. So you said darn near 25, but just about 21.
Yep, so that will end qualifying here. So race 1 later today. Our races are somewhere between 12 and 15 minutes. We don't have a hard stop at 12 or 15. It's just that's kind of the goal. Is that somewhere in there they're going to throw a white flag. You don't know. You can't plan for it. It's just how it is. And it's a lot of fun to watch.
Why do you think that approach happens?
So I like that approach because this is a spectator series. It's designed to be a short form racing series. And if the race is getting boring, just throw the checkered flag and be done. What's the point of racing if we know who's going to win, right? So the idea is there's a little bit of strategy there that you can form if you know how long the race is. You can sit around, you can wait to make that pass. But here, you don't know. You have to make your move, and you have to do it quick. The other thing is that short races, you're not eating breaks as much. You're not eating consumables in general. So it's just nice to have quick, short races. And trust me, these guys will tell you it's plenty long enough.
Yep. All right, so you can see the vehicles pulling in. Kyle, thank you so much for having me here, man. I really appreciate it. Again, we got track battle. We got drifting going on later. GRIDLIFE, just unlike anything else like this in the world. So this is one of my favorite events in the world, but coming here to this track, hanging out with you and hanging out with the fans either online or in the building. What are your closing thoughts there, and what do you expect in race 1?
Well, already we've had a lot of really close action here in qualifying. Race 1 is going to be a blast, 2:30 p.m. That'll be race number 1. That's mountain time for everybody that's back in Central, East, or Pacific. We're in Colorado this week, so keep an eye on the schedule there in your respective time zone. Track battle up next. We'll see you in a few. Coverage of GridLife Alpine Horizon is brought to you by Valvoline, the official motor oil of GridLife, and by Momo, made in Italy since 1964. FCP Euro, every part you buy is guaranteed for life. eBay Motors, let's ride. And Falcon Tires, the Falcon Azenas RT660 is the official tire of Club TR. And K&N, Performance Unlimited.
The more power you have, the more grip you have, the more you push the limits, the more stopping power you need. Get race-proven technology. Hawk Performance.
Hey, we still on this weekend for a little?
You know it. I'm in desperate need of some.
What about you, Jim?
No, my sister's getting the wedding. She's getting married, so.
When adventure calls, make sure you're ready to answer. Stable 360 ethanol treatment is specifically formulated for year-round use, so your engines will be ready when you are. Ready, willing, stable.
For those who don't settle when others do. For those who are set free by performance and believe innovation can take you anywhere.
Ed Vance here, and I'm at my favorite place again.
Sorry, did you say your name is Ed Vance?
That's me.
Like advance?
Crazy, right? And it just so happens he knows everything in advance.
Oh, you know the future? Did you know I needed 10W30?
No. I just know everything here in Advance Auto Parts, like where the 10W30 is.
So you don't know what I'll do next?
Actually, I do. You will be going to the oil aisle.
He's good.
He's Advance.
I spent a lot of time here.
He's here a lot.
This is how we advance.
We've been powering the American road since before it was paved. Our first breakthrough in motor oil was introducing it. And we've been reinventing it ever since. From the world's first high-mileage oil to the world's first synthetic blend. There are those who change with the times, and those who drive them. Valvoline, the original motor oil.
At 303, we're always chasing perfection. Protect your ride with graphene nanospray coating. Now, boost protection, shine, and slickness with Graphene Detailer. Level up your detailing game. Harness the power of graphene with 303.
Ferris Cartoumi, 183, and sets a blistering new track record. GRIDLIFE Alpine Horizon at Pikes Peak International Raceway. Track battle is on track right now, but under caution here this morning, Abe, for an incident on track involving Alex Moss. We'll get you some updates here when we got it, but this racetrack, 1.3 miles, very, very quick laps, and it's a fast place in a Track Mod or Unlimited car.
So we're still early morning in the overall weekend. We've got sessions running for the next 3 days. Driver Michael Almick went out first session of the weekend and broke the street mod record, which was really strong already. So expect the competition here in Group A to be immense, and drivers are only going to get faster because the track, I'm told, is not yet really rubbered in.
Yeah, they call that the track being green, right? There's not a lot of rubber baked into the racetrack yet. Throughout the weekend, that will likely improve. Almick's time was a 58.289. That is cooking around here. A sub 1 minute lap is extremely, extremely quick.
So we had a number of drivers under 1 minute, which I think already is more than years prior. Looks like 8 or so cars under the 1 minute mark, which is pretty incredible.
So I'm looking at, see Alex Moss's car now. Looks like, is the rear suspension sagging there a little bit, like he's got some kind of suspension issue or something of the sort? Or
It's really hard to say. He had some hard luck at Lime Rock Park, got the car repaired, and was out here testing this morning and just rolled out onto his first lap of session 2, but here is stopped up.
Yeah, so again, it's hard to tell from this angle what's going on or what has caused the stoppage here, but Alex Moss this morning ran a 59.765 and is about 1.5 or so seconds off of the pace of Michael Almick, who broke that street mod record here this morning. Ferris Cartoumi did sneak in here again this morning, and I didn't have him on my entry list, so Ferris again is going to aim to break his own records from last season. A 56.517 is what he's done so far. And Robert Thorne, by the way, is back at his GT2 RS at a 57.540 in Unlimited. And that's actually not that far off from Ferris's time, all things considered.
Yeah, Ferris's overall record here is in the 53s.
That's
so
quick.
Ferris has got quite a bit of time to gain to match pace from last year. But depending on the quality of the track, who knows? It could just be a battle for the win for this weekend. Robert Thorne's GT2 RS Club Sport is a really oddball car, but really, really cool to see on track.
Yeah, we've got Mike Dussault and his Camaro, an Unlimited Camaro as well. There's a couple of really neat Unlimited cars that are old Mustangs. A 1965 Mustang is out there as well, and I have to get a name because it's not a driver I'm familiar with, but it is Jeremy Salinas from Bonner Springs, Kansas for Dare to Dream Motorsports. A 65 Ford Mustang. There's also a 1986 Porsche 944. Lauren Southard from Colorado Springs in Unlimited. I don't think that car is anywhere near prepped, but he's on slicks, so that put him in that category automatically. It looks like Ben Ryan from Colorado Springs bringing an 87 BMW 320 into the mix, and Cash Singh in his 2017 Ford Mustang is also in Unlimited. So about 6 cars with Ferris in the Unlimited category. We only had 3 as of a couple days ago, and as they trickled into registration, I got a little excited because more Unlimited cars is always better.
You're right. A car that we probably should spend some time talking about is Mike Dussault's Camaro. It's a vintage-looking car on the outside, but underneath it is state-of-the-art. And this car has won Optima's Ultimate Street Car. It is a very competitive autocross car. It's a Pikes Peak hill climb car. This car does everything. And I talked with Mike a little bit this morning about the current setup. Last year for Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, he was using a compound turbo setup to be able to make boost at the bottom of the hill all the way to the top. This year, he's ditched that setup to run a large single turbo, but he's got a rocket anti-lag system built into the combustion exhaust system to allow the car to build boost at idle up to 10 PSI. So the car makes power everywhere instantly. expect it to be fast.
I think that's really, really neat. I think hill climb cars in particular have that interesting problem to solve when you gain altitude, right? So you've already got that altitude problem solved. For a lot of the drivers at 6,000 feet, their cars are going to make a little less power than they would have thought if they're naturally aspirated. If they're turbocharged, that won't be quite as big of a deal, but the anti-lag system, that's really neat. That's something you really only see on a hill climb car or a really, really intense.
The only other time attack car that I've ever seen with a rocket anti-lag setup is Robert Thorne's Big Bad Wolf S2000, actually. So some years ago, he ran the rocket setup for SCCA Autocross Nationals and ended up winning, I think it was SM or SSM that year, in a car that made boost everywhere. It was very, very cool.
So if you just joined us, we are under red flag right now for an incident on track. Alex Moss's car stopped up by the outside wall on the back straightaway before turn number 2. So that's what we're waiting for to be cleared. I think that car has already been towed off track. They're just checking out the surface conditions. Don't have an update. Alex was still in the car when they pulled it down, so I don't think he hit anything. I think it was just had some mechanical failure of some
Just based on what you described, allow me to speculate just a minute. I have been in that car on this track at speed. And the bump, as described during the GLTC qualifying session, the bump in a time attack car is it's violent.
Yeah.
And I have ridden both with Jackie Ding and with Alex Moss, and it is completely conceivable that the bump, if the car's not set up perfectly for this course, that the bump could, let's say, break a suspension arm.
Yep. Yeah, I think, and we talked about that with Jared in here for the GLTC qualifying. The reason that bump exists is because there's a tunnel for trucks and trailers and pedestrians under turns 1 and 2, and over time, the land underneath the racetrack is actually sagged on top of that tunnel. So there's a really gnarly bump there, and it gets a little less bad up by the outside wall, but Tom O'Gorman said this morning in the driver's meeting that it still was really aggressive up there, and he actually almost cut a tire down in GLTC practice because of that bump. So it'll be something that you manage all weekend long, and I think over the weekend, drivers will kind of acclimate to it, figure out what line their car likes best, maybe make some slight setup changes, raise the right side of the car. They'll later in the weekend, it won't be such a big deal, but it is going to be pretty scary the first couple of sessions.
Now, having talked with Adam, our motorsports director, I do have pretty definitive evidence that the bottom of the track at the bump is the fastest way to get around the circuit. But that's also where the bump is, I'm told, the worst.
Right.
So drivers are going to have to pick and choose their battle, so to speak, to make sure that they can optimize their time without damaging their vehicle.
Here is Michael Amick in the number 6 Subaru, and this is the car that broke that street mod record this morning. As Cal Fortner behind him, the Mercedes-AMG GTS from Al's Auto Body. And both street mod competitors getting ready to go out on track again. As the sun gets higher in the sky, I'd expect the track to slow down a little bit. However, you mentioned how the track was pretty green, not a lot of rubber. So there's going to be a crossover point where the rubber is in the racetrack, and that will help you. And then the sun being high in the sky, beating down on the racetrack, heating it up is going to hurt you.
Yep.
So I'm not really sure what we're about to see. But this, I believe, is this Adam LZ?
Yes, it is Adam LZ. He, I think, was set in Run Group C for this first session earlier today, but ran really fast in a car that's essentially new to him and is running now strongly in Group A.
So cars on track now, and as they roll through turn number 1 here, there's a look at your class descriptions here. It looks like we've got a little bit of an issue to sort out potentially with street mod in particular, but we'll continue to roll on through. Cars making their way into the infield now. There's Mike Coons, by the way, in the 310 back on track. Had some issues at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course and is back out there. But there's Adam LZ running in drift this weekend, but also running in this very, very pretty, I think it's a 1999, yes, a 1999 Mitsubishi Lancer Evo JDM. Got right-hand drive, and it is absolutely pristine, very cool to look at.
So another interesting battle over the course of the overall track battle season is the battle between Steven Luca and Cody Hunt. And what we saw was that the drivers are essentially in a tie throughout the remainder of the year. And I'm told that Steven Luca showed up to this event specifically so that he could get a win over Cody Hunt and potentially secure a championship.
That's a good way to...
If you add the total times for these two drivers that have competed against each other over 5 events already, the total time difference across all events is less than 1/10 of a second.
Amazing how close it is. And I think at a racetrack like this, the course is so short that naturally the distances between them and lap time are going to be smaller as well. But this is also a track that is really unique in that there's a lot of straightaway here, and there's also a lot of like really awkward kind of second gear hairpins. There's not really a place where you're flowing through corners and using a lot of downforce necessarily. Right. So I'm not really sure what kind of car is best for this environment or what modifications will earn you the best speed. It's almost like an autocross setup car would do you pretty well down here. Big fat tires.
Especially on the infield, absolutely. So we're starting to see some times roll through here now, resetting after the stoppage on track. Cars now running in the 1 minute or so range. Drivers improving, I think, are Adam LZ, Eric Vocal, or Andy Vocal, and Tony Barber now at 1 minute and 0.9.
Yeah, so Tony Barber, let's talk about that car. That's a Tesla Model 3. That car is not affected at all by the elevation.
That's true. The Model 3s, historically, at this course, have been competitive within their class, especially because of the altitude.
Yeah, so I actually had an interesting tidbit on this car and this driver, so hang with me for a second while I pull that back up. But Tony was messaging me earlier in this week telling me about this car in particular. First of all, we should mention the shop name, Turn-In Concepts, is what does all the work on that car. And he's working with Adam and you on building a GLTC Model 3. Can you elaborate on that?
Very limited, actually.
Okay.
It's a real challenge to get these cars to fit within our GLTC structure, specifically because the intent is to have cars make speed in similar ways.
Right.
So right now, even though we have V8s and V6s and four-cylinder engines all competing in the same class, generally they accelerate and brake in a similar way. If you add a Tesla Model 3 into this run group, what you get is a car that makes massive straight line speed, but tends to be slower in corners overall because of its weight. And so I do think if this is something that comes to fruition, it's just going to be really challenging from a rules perspective to make sure that these cars race evenly with the rest of the field.
I think that's the biggest challenge. But the good news is we've got Mountain Pass Performance running their Tesla Challenge next year at a select GRIDLIFE events. We talked about that at Lime Rock Park. So that's another interesting rule set that's kind of somewhere between wheel-to-wheel racing and HPDE, which will be a lot of fun to watch, I think, kind of unique passing rules and that sort of thing. But I think racing them together is a little easier in the short term than trying to slam it in with cars that just don't make speed in fundamentally the same way. But I would be interested to see if there was a way to kind of balance it out a little bit. I would be interested in seeing it. I'm not sure it's going to work, but let's give it a go. Why not?
Yeah, I don't really know if there was a way to turn down the overall amount of power on an engine or on a motor like that.
Right.
So it's really going to be kind of a guess and check and a figure it out on the fly sort of approach, because these cars as race cars are relatively new to grassroots motorsports.
Right. Here's, again, Cal Fortner and the Mercedes-AMG GTS. This platform in particular, I'm fascinated by. It's pretty similar in many ways to the GT4 spec car that's run in IMSA and World Challenge and things of the sort. And had talked to Cal a little bit earlier this week and was telling me about some of the modifications that he has done. He's got a competition coilover setup from KW that's very close to what the GT4 teams run, and has a Verkline tubular subframe that retains the OEM mounting points to keep the car in class. He's got, obviously, the crazy aero on it. But the power-wise, they've really done nothing crazy, just some exhaust stuff and a tune. But they're planning on swapping out the turbos next season for that car.
So that car, just for fun, was on the dyno at Lime Rock Park.
Mm-hmm.
And people were venturing a guess on what would make to the wheels. And what we saw was about 520, I think, to the wheels, which is good, but the car is heavy. It's a luxury, like, GT car. So I do think they're probably going to be advantaged by adding some additional power from adding or swapping those turbos.
Looks like Adam LZ's gone a little quicker in street mod, a 101.759, bests his previous best by about 1/10 of a second. I saw a little bit of smoke from the tailpipes of that car. Is that a normal thing? I feel like it's not for that particular
So
car.
I think it depends on the setup. So I had an Evo now, what feels like a million years ago, and there are some peculiarities about how feed and drain lines have to be set up on certain turbos. And if you don't do it just right, you could get oil blow by through the shaft in the turbo, and things get a little smoky.
Yeah, so it looks like it's something to sort out there. I was also looking very closely at the hood and where it attaches to the front of the car. It looked like the sides of the hood were coming up just a little bit, but maybe that's just a body panel fitment thing. But either way, Adam LZ picks up a little bit of time. Steve Luca was up inside the top 10 overall there as well. So Group A is complete. We'll move on to Group B here very, very shortly and move into some of our other categories, namely Falcon Club TR. One of my favorite categories to watch just because there's so many cars in it. This weekend, 16, including some favorites. Foster Johnson, Dana Basinski are here, and Fez Bobber is here. Peter Granberg is here. Kevin Vo. A lot of the heavy hitters in Falcon Club TR are here this weekend. Excited to see how they do, and I think for Dana Basinski, just trying to be out on track. I'm not sure his championship hopes are extremely high, given how good Grant Davidson has run this season, but he is here giving it his all. If he didn't show, he would basically be forfeiting any chance he had at a championship in Falcon Club TR this season. So, we're just waiting for Group B Time Attack in just a moment. Here's a schedule for the rest of the day. I'll read it off to you. Coming up next, it's going to be, we're going to have a little bit of a break for us on the live stream. But at about 2:30, we will return with GRIDLIFE Touring Cup race number 1, followed by Track Battle again, Drift at about 4 o'clock, followed by GLTC race 2. Then more Drift later tonight, night shift Drift following that. But if you're here at the racetrack, your first Drift action will be at 1:30 right after lunch. So we will not be broadcasting that first session. We will be broadcasting the second Drift session a little bit later this afternoon. Lots of spectators already here at the racetrack. Big thanks for joining us here at GRIDLIFE Alpine Horizon. We have a good shot of the midway right now. And hope you enjoy your weekend here at Alpine Horizon. High in the sky, 6,000 feet of elevation just south of Colorado Springs in the shadow of Pikes Peak. And again, the on-track action will be extremely fun to watch once we really get into the thick of it here this weekend. Some of our biggest fields we've had, 76 drift cars here this weekend, 75 time attack cars, and about 25 GRIDLIFE Touring Cup and even more HPDE. So pretty deep into the hundreds in terms of cars that are here, and thousands of spectators will be arriving all throughout today and into the evening as the music acts kick off inside turn number 8.
It's incredible to see the growth at this event. I was here for Alpine Horizon numbers 1 and 2, but was absent last year, and I had heard that it was the biggest one yet. And so to see how busy this track is, and the fact that the motorsport paddock is essentially full on Friday morning is extraordinary.
Yeah,
and I think all of us at GRIDLIFE are humbled and grateful for the support that we have within this series. And it's exciting to see that motorsports here in Colorado is as strong as we thought it could be.
Yeah, I mean, it really is fascinating. And I was standing on top of the Myriad Motorsports toter home last night, and pretty fascinating to see how tightly packed everybody was. The parking team did a really good job getting everybody slotted in here. So many drivers with big haulers and campers, and then you got the guys with just a open trailer all slotting in. It's like playing Tetris, but every piece is different forever. And you're not sure you can really ever win, but they've done an amazing job getting everybody in here. And this is probably the best spectacle I think we have over the course of a season from a festival standpoint. You can see the entire track from one spot, and the music on top of that while the drift is happening. What a show.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is just something incredible about this Roval in particular, and us hosting a festival here, in that if you're inside the Roval, you can see everything. You could walk to any corner you want. You have every vantage point, and that is so rare in motorsports.
It is rare, and we go to a lot of racetracks. I think Lime Rock Park, for example, was a track that we just went to for the first time. A great spectator racetrack, but even that, at only 1.5 miles long, you can't see the whole track from any one given spot. Here, if you get yourself high enough, it's easy to see the whole place. Not like Road America or any of the other bigger tracks we go to, Heartland Park, where you can't physically possibly see the whole track. You have to pick your spot and stick there, and you miss a lot of the good stuff sometimes. We do have some LED walls around the racetrack, so even if you can't get up high, you can still watch all the action from the vendor area as well. So I think everybody's at least got a chance to see some of the on-track this weekend if they can't get themselves 25, 30 feet off the ground to see it all.
It does sound now like Group B is rolling out for their warm-up laps. Expect within probably 1 minute or so the cars take the green flag and begin their flying laps.
Yeah, so cars rolling now and heading through the infield and
I see Corey Ross at Carbondale, Colorado. Had a talk with him last night. There is a lot different on that car from last season, and spends a lot of time running different time attack groups around the country. And this is his first grid life in quite some time in his 2003 BMW M3. And we'll get a look at him. It's a blue and white car. Here's a Subaru on track, and here is the 650 car. And I don't know if I had this one on my entry list or not.
Jeremy Selenius.
Oh, that is Jeremy.
Yeah.
Okay, so he just added a 0 to his number. So he's out of Bonner Springs, Kansas, in the Dare to Dream Motorsports car. That's a 1965 Ford Mustang, or what's left of it. It's an unlimited class car, and you can tell by looking at it that that's the only class that it would fall into.
The bright orange car, the ASM number 109, is Club TR current leader Dana Baczynski. He had, I think, a friendly bet with some of the other Club TR drivers to see if he was able to beat the Club TR record here on his first session. He was not successful. So, but I would expect him to go faster here. He was a 103.697 in the first session, with the record, I think, being a 103.2-ish. And so if we get a chance to see Dana on track, I would expect him to be faster here.
Look at Selenius' car. This is like the ultimate Forza build. I mean, this is taking every modification in the virtual garage and making it real. I mean, this is a crazy-looking car, running in unlimited, as we mentioned. And that thing was digging. Couldn't get up on top of the curbs. A lot of very fragile-looking aero on that car. Across the line for Selenius now, as we'll pull up the timing and scoring for you momentarily and get that on screen. But Jeremy with the Dare to Dream Motorsports Mustang, we're rolling through turn 1. There is the number 56 on track. That car is Graham at the 103.078. It looks like Ryan Dussick's at the top of the board of the number 2. I think that's that yellow Subaru. I think Ryan works at the racetrack. I think he's got his yellow Subi on track with us here this weekend, if I'm not wrong.
I'm also told that he's a big fan of the Slip Angle podcast, which is pretty cool.
I'm a big fan of the Slip Angle podcast. But yeah, it looks like we've got cars on track now. So Dussick's at the top of the board. Selenius running 5th right now. Peter Granberg, another Falcon Club TR competitor. He podiumed in his first round back after he had done the K-Power K-swap to that Subaru BRZ. He'd run a whole bunch of different engine setups with turbos and superchargers and replaced the engine a handful of times and the transmission a handful of times. Said, you know what, we're done with the FA20 Subaru power plant. We're going to do a K-swap power plant now. And immediately that brought Peter Granberg right into the mix in Club TR. Fez Bobber is out here in the GR86, which I think is a great emerging platform. If you can get a hold of one, they're a great car for the Falcon Club TR class.
Absolutely. And so we are now on the tail end of the time attack season within GRIDLIFE Track Battle. There are likely going to be some announcements, adjustments to some of the classing for 2023 as a provisional. We are kind of anticipating that we will have some changes to go into effect in 2024, but give drivers ample time to make classing adjustments. So next year we may see cars continuing to run in these existing classes, but also knowing about the rule set for the following year.
Looks like Dana Baczynski is on track, and he was getting after it on the curbing there in the infield section. Accelerates up onto the front straightaway. 104.049 is best in this session. Picks up about 4 thousandths of a second past 104, so 103.996 for Baczynski. And on the bottom through turns 1 and 2 on the NASCAR oval, sweeps by some traffic here and heads towards turn 2, which is this kink onto the back straightaway, and then turn 3 is this hard braking zone into this very, very sharp left-hander. Dana leaning on the binders here, and we'll get up on the curb here mid-corner to help rotate that car back on throttle, track out towards the edge of the curb, and now head towards turn 4, another second gear hairpin. There's plenty of those around this place. And again, get those right side tires up on the curbing and help hook the car around. You see him climb up onto it here, and then it's just assaulting the curbing here. Right, left, back and forth, getting as much time as you can on these big, tall curbs.
Yeah, and drivers have been warned about track limits here, where it is expected that at least some portion of the tire is inside the white lines. And some drivers want to take these curbs pretty aggressively, and if they do, likely they will be radioed in, and that lap will be disqualified for exceeding track limits.
Yeah, I think reeling in track limits and while driving in time attack was a goal. So I think the idea is, yes, you could drive fast, but also you need to drive safely. And I think there are ways to have both of those things at the same time, and some good initiatives behind the scenes to help continue that. Looks like Fez Bobber working his way through the infield, got the right side tires up on the curb. This wing is really high up in compared to some of the previous Gen 1 cars, and I haven't really, whoa, big jump over the curb, big course cut there for Fez, missed the turn in, and that was certainly a course cut there. That was perhaps the best example I've seen of somebody cutting track limits there. But that will not be a legal lap time, I would imagine.
I would imagine not.
Yeah.
We'll
He was
see.
4 tires on the inside on the green. Looked like he just made a mistake there, and that will not count for the time being. So at the top of the board right now is a track mod car. That's Jake Graham out of Colorado Springs, Colorado, and the TGA Performance Subaru WRX. We saw that car a little earlier. It's kind of red, gray, and black. So Graham at the top. The 246 car on track. Tenj running in second right now as Fez works his way into the infield again. Turns into turn 3. Let's follow this car up into the infield and see if he recoups his mistake from the previous lap. Right now, Fez is passed to 105.903. Now, these cars stock will dyno about 200 to 210 wheel horsepower, which is a pickup of about 30 to 40 wheel. See, again, that's a big cut there, Abe. Would you count that? I would.
That is a off track.
Yes. That was 2 laps in a row, actually, that he's been getting after it there. And so that's kind of the thing you were talking about, right, is you got to keep it in the lines. And for this event, it has been specifically told to the drivers that the white line is the limit. Now, there's a lot of racetracks that have a white line and then the curbing and then another white line, and sometimes that inner one is, or the outer one is the one that you're using, but here it's that inner white line. So even if you've got 4 tires on the curbing, you still could be out of bounds technically. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on this weekend.
So here I am on the stream. I know that after we're done here, I'm going to have to go talk to Fez and make sure that he knows that the course is within the white line.
Yes. Well, you got a great viewpoint for it.
Well, at least I can see it.
At least you can see it. Wow, big slide here for Chevy Camaro. Now, is this the car, the 59 car? Again, working with some new names and faces here this weekend that I was not previously familiar with. I don't have him on my list because he was a late registration, but who we have, it looks like Miller on the board, a 102.413 across the line for him. Will he pick up this time through? He will not. As we work our way towards the end of Track Battle B. Busy racetrack, 20 cars on track. Brad Riemann has not yet laid down a time in his 234 Ford Focus RS. Still one of the biggest disappointments I had in recent automotive memory is Ford killing off all their cars.
Well, that does happen.
It does happen, but man, the RS, the STs, really interesting vehicles that I wish still existed. They occupy a place in the market that I think, is competitive, but more choices is always better. I really like that RS.
So I am very eager to see the new Type Rs compete with the GR Corollas as potential frontrunners in the overall street class.
So I just learned this morning, reading an article, that you talk about the GR Corolla. Toyota actually recently built a couple prototype GR86s with the 1.6-liter turbo from the GR Corolla.
Neat.
As a test bed for clean fuels. Now, if I was over at Toyota right now and I saw all the comments on Facebook about why they should sell that car, I would be putting that thing into production right now.
Absolutely. I think I'm really excited to see that 3-cylinder engine, and it's rated, I think, at 300 horsepower. I expect it to be a very, very competent engine in that vehicle. So Toyota generally makes really good cars, so we'll see if this can turn into a competitive track car. What we've seen with the newest Supra is that the track potential is so remarkably high from that chassis.
Yeah, I'm curious also as to what class that GR Corolla will fall into.
Very likely in street.
Okay, so that's a competitive class though, right? I mean, that's going to be a challenging proposition for an unmodified GR Corolla. I think if you could have convinced anybody to allow it into Club TR, it'd be probably a fairly
I expect
fair
it
fight.
would be an overdog.
Probably.
So, cars within Club TR at most probably make like 250 or
Right.
260 wheel, and the GR Corolla from the factory would make measurably more.
Yeah, and do we know what that car weighs? It's like 28 something, probably.
I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Because it's all-wheel drive, I'm doubtful that it's that light.
Right.
But if it was, I'd be impressed.
Interesting. All right, Track Battle B, checkered flag here on Track Battle B session. At the top of the board, the number 56 car of Graham. We got some more information on the number 59 because he did his registration this morning. So I found him now, Vincent Miller from Elevated Racing out of Hill, Utah. So glad to have Vincent with us here this weekend. Top 5 here in Group B. Corey Ross in that BMW 102.650. Selenius in that crazy-looking 65 Mustang. 6th place, a 103.513. Peter Granberg, Beck Basinski, and a girder the rest of your top 10 here in this session. Fez Bobber in 11th, but I don't think those times are going to stand, or if they do, there will be some coaching about the track limits in the infield section.
And this could be an announcement that has to be made to all drivers. Because
Yes,
if it's
we
a
are on the
situation-
PA here, I think.
Well, they should be hearing this.
Yes, so all track battle drivers, the track is between the white lines, not including the curbing. I think we got that out now, but we'll have to let them all know individually probably. All right.
Waiting now for Track Battle Group C. These are probably going to be cars that are on the more basic level of preparation and drivers that are getting into the sport of time attack. As we make our way into Group D, what you're going to find are a lot of the Sunday Cup drivers who tend to be well-versed in how to do track battle, but do it in cars that are slow.
I think driving a slow car fast is way more fun than driving a fast car slow, Abe.
Well, I can say firsthand that the experience of driving a fast car on a fast circuit, you find yourself entering brake zones saying, I have to scrub a whole lot of speed to safely enter this corner. When you're in a slow car, what you say is, do I have to hit the brakes here? Because I really don't want to.
So I mean, my personal experience of my on-track driving, so I own obviously a Scion FRS that is probably my entire online personality for those that follow me on Instagram. But that car is quick compared to the car that I am building for Falcon Sunday Cup, which I'm going to debut next season. I got a 2012 Ford Fiesta, but the FRS is not a super fast car in a straight line, but it's fast for me because it's kind of the thing I started in. I'm actually looking forward to stepping down in horsepower just to learn A, front-wheel drive driving on track, and B, really carrying momentum better. And, and once I get comfortable doing that in a car that is closer to my personal limits, then I can step back into the FRS and hopefully get more out of it. But right now I've got a payment on that car. It's pretty. I don't want to wreck it. So why not step to a Sunday Cup car where you really, your limit is extraordinarily low?
What we've seen with the data in Sunday Cup cars is, unlike some higher power classes or higher potential classes where exiting the track and getting on power is perhaps the most important thing, in Sunday Cup, it's about carrying as much momentum as absolutely possible and doing it very, very smooth. Even where, you're scrubbing the tire or you're getting some understeer, it costs time. And it doesn't cost time from, let's say, just point to point. It can cost you time, we've seen this in the analysis, from several corners. Let's say from 2 to 6 at a track like Autobahn, where if you make a mistake early, it ruins the entire lap.
Right. I think it really forces you to become a better driver. You don't have your right foot as a crutch. You can't make up the power on the straightaway and head off into the corner and drive in deeper. There's really no making up your mistakes. So you have to perfect your driving. And I think looking at in the pro circuit, the driver like Tom O'Gorman started his career in B-Spec Honda Fits, and look where he is now. I mean, that's a great example of learning how to carry momentum and carrying that experience to other cars. Cars on track for Group C now. Honda Civic. Hey, this is a car that you're familiar with, this chassis.
I'm a big fan. That's Austin Gates, I think, in a
yes,
car.
I believe.
It looks like a Type R, but it is I think a Civic Sport.
I think you're right about
which
that.
is pretty cool.
Yeah. So Austin is out of Warrenville, Illinois for Wunderladen Racing in a 2018 Honda Civic. And the four-door variant, and rolling through kind of tentatively here on a warm-up laps. I think, as it has been for the last couple of decades, the Honda Civic continues to be probably one of the best all-around cars that also has some performance value that you can get. You need a car that does everything. It used to be the Honda Fit, but they don't sell those anymore. I would be going for a Civic. If I had to buy a new car today, I'd be going Honda Civic SI all the way.
I am patiently waiting on the arrivals of the new Type Rs, and will put myself in line once they become available. having ridden with Valvoline partner Patrick Daugherty at AMP earlier this year, the performance potential in stock form of a Civic Type R is just so incredible. It's hard to argue with it, with potentially buying anything else.
It has a real trunk, has a manual gearbox, it's reasonably quick, and it's not the most expensive car on planet Earth.
And on tight circuits, it is remarkably quick.
Here's Drew Cleaver in the 717 Tesla Model 3. We haven't seen Drew in a little while, I feel like.
Yeah, so Drew was, I think, our first entry of an EV car into the track battle classes 3 years ago, maybe. This area being his home event, at least for a period. And at the time, it was really hard to say, well, where does this car even fit? Because, frankly, the rule sets that we have don't capture very well modern electric EVs.
So the interesting thing, watching him navigate through the infield, and I hope we can pick up this white Tesla again here in a second, watching the suspension over the curbing, it looked different than Tony Barber's car. And I'm wondering how different they are setup-wise between Tony and Drew.
So I talked with Tony at Mid-Ohio, and he said that his Model 3 is still a commuter car. It's his wife's car, but it's been set up for doing track battle, which includes all spherical bushings underneath. So the car is meant to be very, very well dialed in from a suspension standpoint. And I can't say for sure that Drew's car has had such a magnifying glass placed on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just watching it, it just moves differently. It has a little bit of a bounce when it gets off the curbs, and I don't think I saw that so much with Tony's car. So, again, I think it's really interesting to compare those two cars because with a Tesla, there's not really a lot you can do to the powertrain. You're kind of stuck with what you got. However, suspension and brakes, you got some options there. So I think there's, and I'm sure as time goes on, the aftermarket for these things, especially in autocross and time attack competitions, that aftermarket is going to become a hot place, especially in the suspension area because it's the only thing you can really do. So really interesting to see the different formulas that people apply to the same chassis because you're kind of limited in what you can and cannot do. And here's a look at, I think, this is Dustin Williams, and I think I'm correct in that. And this must be that's a track modified car this time. Dustin out of Wildomar, California for the Legends Circuit team. And if you're not familiar with Dustin, Dustin's got a big old YouTube channel, and you should follow and subscribe to Dustin Williams on YouTube. They make some amazing automotive-related content, especially the recent stuff. He was in Japan for a couple of months and made some really neat content there. Dustin has come to a bunch of grid lifes in a couple of different cars, and he has brought this 1989 Nissan Silvia right-hand drive to play in track mod here this weekend. So really neat to have Dustin here in the paddock, and for all the spectators that are here that might be familiar with him from the online world, we'll get to see him and meet him here this weekend.
So one of the, I think, interesting things as an outsider, I am outside the YouTube universe for the most part. I don't have a YouTube channel. This is not my job to make YouTube content. As we see these drivers coming to events, I have to imagine that it is both fun but very, very taxing to focus on competing while also being engaged with people that want to meet you and talk more about the content that you create, because the conversations begin as soon as you exit the car and they stop the second you get back in. So I'm sure that these drivers are kind of at the limit of their mental bandwidth to handle a busy weekend like this.
I think there's a lot to that, Abe. I think there's a pretty big challenge involved with making content and doing things of the sort. This is another track mod car that I need to take a look at. That is Paul Heffron out of Castle Rock, Colorado in a 1986 Toyota Corolla, and that is a very classic and cool looking car.
Neat.
For a couple of different reasons, Abe. But what a cool, interesting vehicle. And really track mod, because it's kind of a catch-all for cars that kind of fall outside of the other rule sets, not quite unlimited level, but there's some really unique vehicles in there this weekend. The 1989 Silvia that Matt Beck has, actually he's got the same car as Dustin Williams, essentially. Corey Ross's 03 M3. There's an 2018 Subaru WRX, an 06 Mazda Speed 6, and a 1991 Acura NSX from WDL Racing. So look, I mean, just across that one class, how much diversity there is in it.
of course, I think there will be a pretty clear line in terms of who's competitive in that class and who is not this weekend. But regardless, everyone's on track having fun. There's, again, a look at Paul Heffron, another local here from Castle Rock, Colorado. Really cool-looking car. Very tiny-looking wheels, jumps up on the curbs, and looking very darty and nimble and the lightweight. Not a lot holding this car back through the corners. And working our way around Track Battle Group C. Coming up next in just a couple of minutes, we're going to get to see a handful of our Falcons Sunday Cup competitors. That's kind of the exciting part to wrap up our Track Battle coverage for the first part of the day. And Sunday Cup, again, we'll get more into it when we see those cars on track, but I just don't think that there is a more fun way or a better way to spend the smallest amount of money on a racetrack. I mean, it is a really interesting class. Well, I'll save my stories for when we get into it, but here comes Paul into the braking zone for turn 3. Slowing the car down, looking towards the apex. A little bit of a lateral slide there, Abe. He's getting after it in this car.
Little slide there in the back, huh?
Getting after it. Certainly not holding back. And again, the car looks very well balanced.
Cool car.
A great looking car. I love the fenders on it. But I think the balance of this car is why this particular vehicle kind of inspired the build of the modern 86 GR86 BRZ, whatever you'd like to call. But, rear-wheel drive, lightweight, simple was kind of the recipe for this car. It wasn't designed to be a race car or a sports car, but it just kind of ended up being that way because it's a back-to-basics vehicle.
Indeed. I think if a car exists, there's probably someone willing to race it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about the simpler a car is, the easier it is to go racing with it. Yeah, sure, Porsches are amazing cars, but they're not necessarily simple in a lot of ways. I think that could be said about a lot of supercars, right? They're amazing vehicles on the racetrack, but besides the expense, they're complex machines. But when you look at cars like the 86, like the Corolla, the Honda Civic, the Honda Fit, they're just simple vehicles that are easy to service, easy to maintain, easy to modify. And I think the aftermarket has a pretty heavy say in what cars end up being popular track cars. I think Mazda Miatas, the first generation Mazda Miata, I can't believe that a 35-year-old car can sell for $10,000, $11,000 when it's clean and unmodified. But people want those things because they're simple, because they're reliable, all of the above.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're seeing here now are we've got now the leaderboard on stream. Drew Cleaver with a 1:04.7. How does that compare to Tony Barber's earlier times posted?
So Tony ran a little bit quicker towards the end of that first session, but Tony's best time so far was a 1 minute point 8:05.
That's really fast.
It's really quick.
That's a big gap for Drew Cleaver to overcome.
Here's Cash Singh, and I believe this is an unlimited car, and we've seen this car at this event in the past, and I think every year it's got some changes and looks a little different. But that is a mean-looking Mustang heading through the infield now.
Absolutely. These cars, they don't show how big they are on screen. They are gigantic vehicles. We were standing next to one in GLTC last event at Lime Rock Park, and if you compare it to a car like Eric Cattill's, for example, it feels like it's almost double the size.
Right, and I think a lot of this new Ford Mustang in particular, this S550 generation Mustang, there was a lot of changes to make it a better sports car, because the previous generation Mustang was really the tail end of this is a muscle car, independent rear suspension, big old V8, has a ton of weight. The newer car, while I don't think it's as light and nimble as the cars we were just mentioning, it certainly is a better sports car because of that independent rear suspension, a little bit of weight loss. I think there's a lot to be said. I know this car is not one of those, but there's a lot to be said about the EcoBoost Mustang because there's a lot less weight in the front. It actually changes the dynamics of the chassis quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think what we're seeing within the GridLife Track Battle field is drivers tend to be building the cars they want to drive and really just seeing where they fall.
That's great. I mean, I don't think anyone really wants to have to choose a particular chassis. I think you want to have your choice and build the car that you want to build. I think you can do that in pretty much every class that we run here in GridLife, all the 7 Time Attack classes and in GLTC and in Drift for that matter. But Dustin Williams, 3rd place in the overall running order here in Group C, a 105.103 for Dustin. I think Dustin,
from what I've seen at GridLife festivals when he joins us, he seems to consistently improve event over event. He's getting quicker and quicker. So I'm curious as to follow him throughout the weekend in that 1989 Sylvia and see how he does in track modified. Again, I think he's going to be outgunned significantly because of the class that car falls into, the way it's modified, but I think lap times will really tell this whole story there. Cash Singh, here's the 28 on track now, and this weekend, this is one of the Not Fast Motorsports crew that is behind the wheel of this car. And yes, it is Not Fast behind the wheel, but who is actually behind the wheel today? This is going to be a Falcon Club TR car, and I didn't have it on my list here, so I'll check the other one and get hopefully a name, but it might be a combination of drivers. I think Peter Zhang is here, but kind of not exactly sure who's behind the wheel right now based on the timing and scoring. So track battle C, checkered flag is out. Ramirez at the top, Cleaver, Williams, Getz, Bauer, the rest of the top 5, Escobar, Poulsen, Singh, Heffron, and Flavin in the Club TR 86. I think it's a BRZ that he's driving, running in 10th. That is going to be it for that last group. We got one more group that's going to involve really what I want to focus on is that Falcon Sunday Cup category. I think I had 5 on my entry list. There might be a 6th joining us for this session, but the 5 that I have on my list: Sam Dooling, there's an on-grid fit that's here, Rory Lonergan, Jake Abbott, and Pete Lindbergh are the 5 drivers that are here. 4 of those 5 are Honda fits, but Pete Lindbergh, with support from Fields Auto Works, is now in a 2013 Mini Coupe, which is a really unique, interesting car. I had a look at it the other day. They got it for, basically, they said half of what the car should have been sold for. And it's going to be on track here shortly with Pete behind the wheel.
Well, it's hard to beat cheap. Love cheap cars. And if you can bring them out to the track and drive them and push them to their absolute limit, what you'll find in the Sunday Cup class is that the driver talent behind the wheel tends to be actually really high. The performance potential of the car tends to be a little bit lower, and that means that drivers have to be patient, and they have to really focus on making sure they ask the car to do what the car can do and not more than that. Because if you ask for more, it will be slower.
Yeah, certainly. I think, when we talk about Sunday Cup, I think, for those that have been watching these streams, for the Sunday Cup fans, they've heard me say this a million times, but this class is the best place to start your time attack career, I think. And I also think it's one of the best places to fall to when your unlimited car has cost you too much money.
Arguably, the time attack retirement homes within GridLife are Sunday Cup and GLTC.
Yeah, I think I think GLTC is for those drivers that want to get out there and wheel-to-wheel race. But I think if you still like the time attack structure, you still like going after track records and still like going after individual lap times, Sunday Cup is, again, for a beginner, one of the best places to start, but it is not a beginner class. The competition level in there is absolutely absurd. I'm about to see it for myself. I had a 2012 Ford Fiesta that was sitting in a warehouse for 2 years, finally decided to put coilovers on it that had been sitting in a box for 2 years, and I looked through the rule book. I go, how am I going to waste money on this? And you know what my answer was? I said, I can't. There's actually no way to spend a whole bunch of money. The worst thing you can do if you want to blow a bunch of money is just buy a new set of tires every round. That's the only thing that you can do.
Yeah, basically.
Because brakes, you hardly use them. You're only changing front brakes anyway. You're not really using your rear brakes. You're not really using brakes in general. Oil and tires.
Right.
And your suspension. And that's it. That's the great attraction is you can get on track and you can compete at an extremely high level for a very small amount of money. And it can be your only car. You can have a Honda Fit. You can sleep in it, drive it to the racetrack, compete in it, win in it, and then drive home.
Absolutely.
With a trophy in the passenger seat.
Well, yeah. So leader for Sunday Cup currently is Kevin Burke in the on-grid Hot Laps car here on screen. Now, Kevin wanted to have a little fun this weekend and wrapped the car in a really particular style. But then he also wanted to be a doof, and he made sure that his helmet wrap matched the car. So wants to be serious about not being taken seriously. And the records here for Sunday Cup, I think, are pretty strong. What we saw in the first session was Kevin Burke running a 1:11 but I don't know how close that is to the records. So I'm going to look that up in real time. We'll see how it goes.
So cars on track right now making their way around. The 43 is Lehman behind the wheel of a CRX. There's the on-grid fit again. That is Kevin Burke behind the wheel. And I love seeing wraps on Sunday Cup cars. I hope that's a trend that continues.
That looks really cool.
It looks super cool.
So I was mistaken. Actually, Kevin Burke is the new track record holder in Sunday Cup in his first GRIDLIFE Festival attendance.
Really? Well, already we're off to a good start there.
Kevin can drive.
He certainly can, and that on-grid fit looks the part too. Rory Lonergan's out on track, Pete Lindbergh, and here is the 370. That's Sam Dooling out of Muskegon, Michigan for Abbott Auto Performance. He's one of our volunteers and helps run everybody through tech, and thankfully gets an opportunity every now and then to go on track and compete. And he's got girlfriend Sophie here this weekend as well, helping out in tech, and very, very thankful and grateful for that duo to come help us out every week, and all the Abbott Auto Performance guys, and Greg and Jake, that also really make the world go round here in tech.
Now, interesting trivia. I think Jacob Abbott is the only Sunday Cup driver to be disqualified because the car was too hot.
Is that who it was? I heard that happened.
Too hot. Way too much power.
What do you mean way too much? What is that?
I generally, Sunday Cup cars make 100 horsepower or less for their weight, and I think Jacob made like 107.
That's a lot of power.
That's a peppy little Sunday Cup car.
All right, the other car we just saw, well, this is the 47 car of, is that Nick Lucchesi behind the wheel of that car this week? I would say that is, yes, it is Nick Lucchesi at Mad Labs Racing in a 1996 Honda Civic. And the 68 car, Montana, is on track in Falcon Club TR. Pete Lindbergh is in that mini coupe that we'll pick up here in a little bit, not number 969. Pete's run a first-gen fit with us a whole bunch, a blue first-gen fit, but now moving to the Fields Auto Works camp. And here is another good look at one of our, I think this is a track mod car, is it not, here this weekend?
So I'm curious to see Ravi Tamerlan here in the Group D. I wonder if he had an issue early in session number 1. This car is really unique, first generation NSX, but it's got a K20C swap from a new Type R in the back.
That is fascinating. I've seen this car at other Time Attack competitions, and I think we've seen it here at this event in the past. Maybe.
I don't recall.
I feel like I do, but I'm not sure about that. But Ravi out of Arizona with the WDL Racing NSX. It is in track mod. I think it's probably had an issue earlier, which put it down in this group. I think we'll see it jump up a couple groups later this weekend. But fascinating looking car. It really looks, I think that's one of the quintessential Time Attack vehicles.
Absolutely.
It's synonymous with North American Time Attack competitions, and honored to have it here this weekend competing with us. So Tamerlan at the top of the board, the number 16. That's that car we were just mentioning at a 104.396. And looking down the order, Pete Lindbergh in that Mini at a 114.189. And for Pete, he's got to learn a brand new chassis. Again, he's been competing in the Honda Fit for as long as I can remember. And now switching to a Mini, which I know drives very differently. They have a much shorter wheelbase. Although the Mini Coupe in particular might not be as short as the regular Mini Cooper.
Yeah, I can't say for sure. I've never driven one. So I have been fortunate to spend a decent amount of time behind the wheel of the Honda Fits, and they are an absolute joy to drive.
So there is Rory Lonergan again in the number 594 car for Dead Bear Racing. And he sent me a message last night. He's got wife June with him here this weekend, crew chiefing for the car. And they basically began running with us at GRIDLIFE, coming to Track Day Picnic in 2021. Best kept secret in GRIDLIFE, I think. And, well, they had engine issues with their Miata. They decided to buy the Honda Fit and try Time Attack and Sunday Cup. And he and his wife previously owned second-gen Fits, so they just went right back to where they came from in terms of their car selection, and ran at Heartland Park last year, and just were they felt so loved by the entire community that they kept coming back. And they said, why Dead Bear Racing? Why that team name? Well, they had a 1990 Mazda Miata, and his dad had a 2002 Miata, and a bear hit the left front corner of his Miata and totaled it. The bear didn't make it either, about a 350-pound black bear, but they bought the car back from insurance, and then they made up the team name Dead Bear Racing. So that's where that story comes from, but holy cow.
So It looks like, who else is hot lap? Kevin Burke looks like he had a little bit of trouble. Maybe spent some time in the pit making some changes and recording a 5-minute, 7-second lap here, which means that he didn't cross start finish for quite a while.
Yeah, something's certainly not going right there for Kevin Burke, but ran quick earlier. Pete Lindbergh, again, still learning. I haven't seen that time change. There is Pete right now, by the way, in the Mini as he works through turn number 4 ahead of Rory Lonergan and into the infield section. And in just a couple minutes, we're going to wrap up Time Attack here, so bear with us. Time Attack is going to complete in just a few minutes. We're going to take a lunch break. We'll be back with coverage at 2:30 for GRIDLIFE Touring Cup race number 1. There's Kevin back on track now. And rolling through. Here's a gorgeous NC Generation Miata with custom orange metallic paint on it. I own an orange metallic car. It is not as pretty as this one. This is a better orange.
Driver looks like he's getting it as well, getting the rear end to rotate around just a little bit, but keeping it inside track limits.
Whoops, there's a problem for the 229, 239, 229.
Looks like 229.
Imormino, potentially?
Likely to be dead on track. I expect that this will be a black flag here almost immediately.
Yes, that is a street class car. And 229, yes, it is James Imormino out of Castle Rock, Colorado. It's 1992 Honda Prelude. And that car is stuck and at least off the racetrack, so it should be able to continue the session for now. But check in the mirror, make sure no one's coming up behind him. Ted Xavier, by the way, in the 119, that is a Fiat 124 Spider that has made it out here in that Fiat number 119, currently 11th in class. But in Sunday Cup, looks like Jake Abbott trails Lonergan in this session, but 112 is what Lonergan has run.
So cars look like they're still relatively at speed, so I'm curious if perhaps that driver pulled off into a safe pull-off zone that would allow the session to keep running. If that's the case, thank you for that driver doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think he did pull off track, so we should be able to continue. Here's the 43 continuing to work through the infield section here. Lehman in the 43. Didn't get what class that car was in, but I found it already. Alan Lehman out of Colorado Springs. It's 1991 CRX in street class. And working his way through. And there looks like that's the 369 car. And that car, again, looking down my list, lots of new names and faces, which is great to see, honestly, Abe. Again, we compete mostly in the Midwest, so when we come out this far to Colorado, there is always a smattering of new drivers. I think we had 25 or 30 out of the 76 drivers we've got here this weekend. A huge percentage of them were new or returning to just this particular event. But that checkered flag is out here for Track Battle Group D, Abe, so we'll wrap things up here and move on. We'll jump to lunch for a little while. We'll be back in about an hour and 50 minutes for GLTC Race 1, Abe, but final thoughts on Track Battle?
I mean, we saw drivers go fast and improve records already. I mean, it's really early on Friday, and I am already impressed with the pace, but I expect it to improve. So I think drivers are going to make some setup changes and come out again in the afternoon prepared to put down some of their absolute best laps.
All right, well, that's going to do it for Track Battle. We again live on YouTube again at 2:30. Again, if you're watching on Twitch or Facebook, don't go anywhere. We'll be here the whole day. We'll cut it out right before Night Shift Drift, and we'll fire it back up so it's a discrete stream. But next up, 2:30, GRIDLIFE Touring Cup, race number 1. We'll see you later. Coverage of GRIDLIFE Alpine Horizon is brought to you by Valvoline, the official motor oil of GRIDLIFE, and by Momo, made in Italy since 1964. FCP Euro, every part you buy is guaranteed for life. eBay Motors, let's ride. Falcon Tires, the Falcon Azenas RT660 is the official tire of Club TR. And K&N, Performance Unlimited.
At 303, we're always chasing perfection. Protect your ride with graphene nanospray coating. Now, boost protection, shine, and slickness with Graphene Detailer. Level up your detailing game. Harness the power of graphene with 303.
Ed Vance here, and I'm at my favorite place again.
Sorry, did you say your name is Ed Vance?
That's me.
Like advance?
Crazy, right? And it just so happens he knows everything in advance.
Oh, you know the future? Did you know I needed 10W30?
No. I just know everything here in Advanced Auto Parts, like where the 10W30 is.
So you don't know what I'll do next?
Actually, I do. You will be going to the oil aisle.
He's good.
He's Ed Vance.
I spent a lot of time here.
He's here a lot.
This is how we advance.
The more power you have, the more grip you have, the more you push the limits, the more stopping power you need. Get race-proven technology. Hawk Performance.
Hey, we still on this weekend for a little?
You know it. I'm in desperate need of some.
What about you, Jim?
No, my sister's getting. Yeah, dun da da. The wedding. She's getting married, so.
When adventure calls, make sure you're ready to answer. Stable 360 ethanol treatment is specifically formulated for year-round use, so your engines will be ready when you are. Ready, willing, stable.
We've been powering the American road since before it was paved. Our first breakthrough in motor oil was introducing it. And we've been reinventing it ever since. From the world's first high-mileage oil to the world's first synthetic blend. There are those who change with the times, and those who drive them. Valvoline, the original motor oil.
For those who don't settle when others do. For those who are set free by performance and believe innovation can take you anywhere.